Thank you very much, Nosh. That is a beautiful introduction. You make my life sound a lot more glamorous than it actually is. It's a pleasure to be here, and I will present work in progress to you that might not come as a shocker to you, but I find it actually interesting. I do ethnographies, and you will see the data roll out in front of your eyes. We're gathering them right now. And I am talking about the collaborative production of scientific knowledge. I want to tell you a little bit why I started thinking about collaboration. It's something we all do, right? I have a long-standing interest in knowledge sharing, how people share knowledge, how they connect to each other. And if you look a few years back, you would see a trend from there to now in terms of co-authorships. How many of you actually have read a paper recently that is authored by one author? Yeah, I thought so. Well, you. Do you read philosophy? Well, and there are outliers, and that is true. But the trend is definitely towards more collaboration. And the fact is, as we all know, the world is becoming more complex. But on the other hand, we are all getting more specialized. So something that is actually based on research done at Northwestern by Ben Jones was said in the Wall Street Journal a few months back, saying collaboration is no longer an option, it's actually a necessity. In order to understand complexity and large-scale systems, we have to pool our resources and get together. I know X and you know Y, so let's work together. This is actually something I'm trying to talk Yuval into to work with me. So I was just thinking of how does collaboration work? You have some examples of large collaborations. Okay, Atlas at CERN. It's one of the largest collaborative efforts ever attempted in the physical sciences. In this picture, you have all the collaborators, or a large portion of the collaborators, on this project that is based in Geneva and puts together 3,000 scientists from 37 countries and 137 universities. That's pretty amazing, right? So they're trying to understand a really big picture, and so they're pulling all these people together. But the picture that you saw there of the folks at CERN, that's probably the only time that they all met face-to-face. Usually, what do you think they do? I mean, very clearly, they are somehow virtually organized. And so the question that arose while I was looking at these things, I'm just, interested in science. It's just something fascinating, how it gets created. And so how do people organize virtually to produce science? And how do virtual organizations actually affect the production of scientific knowledge? It used to be that you have a single lab, you have a PI, and that is the center of knowledge production. And now you have what they call invisible colleges or collaboratories, where you go across the brick and mortar walls and work together. Now, how does that influence the way knowledge is created? So what are some social, if any, and technological implications? And does it actually change the knowledge that is being produced? And so this is the question that we're trying to address in this research. Of course, the study of science, the study of scientific collaboration is not new, and probably many of you in the room, I know certainly of some, are doing that. I just wanted to tell you of these few building blocks that that influences our thinking in this realm, and where we fit in. Actually, I can anticipate it right away. We fit in here. Okay. So there is this, if you will, macro field of studying the science of team science, scientific teams. Again, these are folks at Northwestern, and then organizational. I'm just putting out a few examples. There are huge literatures behind this that look at mostly large-scale data, so patents, co-authorship networks, and grants. Nosh presented some wonderful work on that. And then there are folks who look at virtual organizations that can be in the scientific realm, and in others, how people organize across time and space. And then there are the more classical brick and mortar lab studies of people who actually observe, like what we're doing, observe laboratory life. And these tend to be more micro. Okay, so, but we're saying that the process of scientific knowledge creation is a lot more complex than what has been addressed in these previous studies. If you look at it, you will always see that they highlight one aspect of it. Okay, so, and I will try to make a case for how little you know from just looking at co-authorship networks, how little you understand of what's really going on. And I will get in trouble for this, but let me just make this point. So here's an overview of the project that Nosh mentioned that we're doing. So currently, we have concluded our ethnographic observations at the first study, and we are collecting data for bibliometric analysis. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it, but it should be combined with something else. And finally, we'll do some validation interviews to see what we're finding is actually what is really happening. Okay, so to study, to try to understand the process of scientific knowledge, we chose the field of biology. And I want to show you this XKCD cartoon. If that is not in your bookmarks, it needs to be. Okay, so I'm not even a sociologist, so I'm somewhere here. Yeah, this is the fields arranged by purity, okay? Psychologists have a thing over sociologists. That's why I'm trying to work with Yuval. He will get me up on the evolutionary ladder. Then there are biologists, right? And chemists and physicists. And maybe in a very future life, I'll be able to study mathematicians. They are so pure, you can't even see them over there. But I mean, more seriously, something happened in biology that makes it a little special as opposed to the other sciences that you've seen up there, the purer sciences. And that is the fact that collaboration in this realm is fairly recent. There has been this explosion that De Sola Price called the evolution from little science to big science only in the mid-90s. Does anybody remember what, some of you are really very young, but you remember what happened in the mid-90s, maybe historically? You must have some idea of what happened in, I'm sorry? Very good. That was the first sequencing of a complete eukaryotic genome. So the first one was just of a bacteria, and then this one was the 95, 96 was then where they had the first complete sequencing of a genome. Okay, what that means was that there was an explosion of data available. Okay, and then there's something else that happened in 95, 96, so the widespread diffusion of the internet. So these two factors coincided and changed biology in a way that is simply mind-blowing. So on the one hand, you had a lot of data, and on the other hand, you were able to they were available. You were able to search these data. So it's not just that we're trying to be cool. We chose it for a specific reason. So, and in particular, the field that we chose is a specific topic in molecular biology to protect the subjects in the study. We have not specified exactly what they do, and also I should tell you that all the names are changed, and sometimes the gender too, because it is actually a small field. And that is the beauty of it in terms of a network analysis, that there are about 300 scientists, PIs, principal investigators worldwide, who do research on this particular topic. Okay. And I want to tell you a little bit about our ethnographic data collection effort, because that is what I'm going to talk about today. So we studied 3 labs, and they all pretty much have a similar setup. So there is one PI, one professor, and depending on the size of the lab, an average size would be to have 2 to 4 postdocs and 2 to 5 grad students. How does that compare to this lab? This is bigger. It's about the same size. Okay. So there you go. You're okay, you'll get there. I was told to repeat everything because you can't get it in your... And so we started observing the lab closest to home in January 2010, and then we also traveled to Leslie and I. Leslie Paik, I should mention, is the co-PI of the study, a sociologist. And so we each traveled to another location and stayed there for between 2 weeks and 4 weeks. And so our observations consist of following these scientists through a typical workday, and or a task that they're completing. So maybe they're doing an experiment, so we would follow them step by step, watching the experiment happen, and attend their lab meetings. I also went to a 2-day big conference held at Cold Spring Harbor Lab, which is the lab, beautiful, on Long Island, founded by Watson, of Watson and Crick fame. And they attract scientists from all over the world. It's beautiful. And I was shadowing people at the conference, and then we conducted follow-up interviews with people. So with this kind of data, there is obviously a lot going on. You can imagine we have a rich understanding now of the work processes, but I'm trying to give you one glimpse, one aspect of it, of this immensely rich material that we have. And that is the focus on databases. Databases as an exemplification of virtual organization. Okay, we're going into the mechanics here of how virtual organization actually happens. And when you think of databases, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Just say quick, Alina. Just say something. Sharing information. Very good, thank you. Anybody else? Big knowledge. You're also advanced. You're not helping me there. Well, the first thing that I would think of, maybe that's my upbringing, is of some sort of digital library, right? Some storage of information that somehow can be retrieved. Yeah, so that is definitely a database, but there is a lot more going on there. So, for example, they have, in science, we're doing this in the social sciences more and more. You have to produce supplements to your papers that detail the information that didn't make it into the paper. The paper is maybe 8 pages long. The supplement is maybe 32 pages long. Or it can be a database. It can be an Excel file detailing all the experiments and all the results. So there are databases that are made up of journal paper supplements. Okay. Then there are databases that are constructed based on any publication of a new information on a gene. So you have like a library of genes and all the interactions of genes and all the, so the sequencing and all the interaction effects between genes. Okay, just imagine, it's pretty mind-blowing. And then you also have what people store personally as they do their work, lab results, maybe bibliographies, and so on. So we're interested in these databases because they are a good exemplification of a virtual organization. And just to give you an idea here, we mapped the scientific process and try to show where databases come into the picture. Sometimes when you look at this, you just probably have to think about your own scientific process. The scientists that we presented this with were actually pretty happy to see this mapped out because they said, yeah, that's actually what I do, but I don't think of it in these terms. So you start out, hopefully, with an idea, okay? And then you have to say what's out there. Who has done what? You do your literature review. And you go to databases and you look up the publications and you also look up the information on that particular part of a cell or so on. And you have discussions, of course, within the lab, okay? And then you conduct your experiments, or in your field, whatever method you're using, okay? You come up with some results that you interpret at the light, again, of what has been found before and discussion. Then you might have to refine your protocol because something didn't pan out the way. This is where replicability comes in, right? And verifiability. And then you might have to conduct new experiments, and you go again. These could be endless loops. And then at some point, you write up your results, and it goes through peer review. If you're lucky, it comes out with a publication, which we all know is the ultimate goal of the scientific process. And that will hopefully lead to other ideas by you or by somebody else. Okay? And sometimes you will have to conduct more experiments after the peer review. And again, you will avail yourself of databases and discussions again. So you see how databases are an integral, important part of the scientific process at every step. This is at least our argument. And just to talk a little bit more about, to get to the gist of the concept of collaboration, we realized that discussions and databases highlight various levels of collaboration and aspects of collaboration that are not all the same. So collaboration does not equal collaboration. So we try to, this is not obviously a mathematical graph. It's just try to order collaboration or interaction from the intensity of interaction and the intensity of effort, okay? So you could just read up on literature, which is very low on interaction, or have a face-to-face ongoing collaboration, which is the highest in intensity and interaction. But all this, all this part here involves databases. So you see how a collaboration can start because you read up on somebody's work, and then you contact them for more information. Or you might even contact them for a reagent, some physical product that they have created. So just for people who are not very versed in biology, like me a few years ago, a mouse, a genetically modified mouse is a reagent. Okay, so you have created a resource that, that somebody else can use. Okay, think of the implications of this. You don't have to breed a whole set of mice with no fur, or, you know, they exist. So once you have published something on the mouse with no fur, you're actually supposed to share. So you can contact as a researcher who is who wants to do research with mice that have no fur, contact that lab that has bred the mice, and you get your shipment. And then there is obviously less, I don't know, I haven't gotten over the mouse thing, but there are less tragic reagents, such as a new mixture an assay that you could use, a cell that is already sliced and ready to go. Okay? And again, if I might remind you, when you, and this is something you might or might not know, when you engage in such an exchange of resources and materials, you will be on the paper, most likely. You will either be a co-author or you might be in the acknowledgments. For reasons that I can't get into here, there is a whole political dimension to that. And that has something to do with the work that Buchti, Jones, and Uzzi did about the tiers of universities that people are affiliated with, and, you know. So I can't get into this here because I'm focusing on the databases, and I'll present a little bit of field notes to you to show you what is going on there in terms of databases. So about the explosion of data, one PI said, when I was a graduate student studying my topic, I knew every paper, and it was a finite thing. And yes, sure, there were fuzzy edges, and there was stuff that was outside of it, but I knew every paper that was relevant to my work. Now I don't, because there's just so much. Do you know the feeling? Yes. Okay, so this exemplifies this explosion of data in the field. Okay. On the other hand, so this database is a really important resource for me. I can get important pieces of data from that website that otherwise would take me a really long time to look up. I can compare genes to each other in ways that I can't in any other way. So I can say, tell me all the genes of a certain family, and it'll give me all those genes. And then tell me how they behave under this condition and under that condition, and I can do that. So prior to 95, you had to do this yourself. If you wanted to know an interaction between one gene and another, you went to the bench, put your needs in your hole, and did your experiment. And this is nowadays you can just look it up. Okay, but the question is, what is in those databases? Do you remember? For example, mostly published data, okay, but also data that people have collected. So we are assuming that what is in there is true. Okay. We're trusting the facts. We're taking it as a fact. Okay. Latour said, once published, a fact is accepted as truth until it's proven wrong. You know, in science, that happens all the time. That's how science improves. You prove something wrong, and you move on. What about all the research that is based on the previous truth? Not true anymore. And so there is a lot of trusting or distrusting the facts that is going on there. And I'm just, I have two pieces of field notes here that are sort of contradicting each other. So in one instance, there was a discussion between the PI and the doctoral student, and he said, I don't know, something is going wrong here. It's just not right. And so the PI said, well, where was it published? It's it needs to be a good journal. So they trust that a better journal will publish the truer data, the better data. Okay. So they have this trust that the better journals wouldn't accept something that isn't technologically sound. But remember, what they accept is also based on what has been published previously. So nobody is going to replicate all the experiments that lead to the experiments that are being submitted for publication. Okay. On the other hand, there is another instance in the lab where we were watching Jen look over a website that's called Lab Life, and it's like a Facebook for scientists. And they have, it's going online right now, and they have a lot of primer or other things that they say, here, this is how you do it. And so Jen says she designed a primer using her eyes, pen, and paper. So her colleague sees that and says, why didn't you just do it online or just look it up online? She says, I trust my eyes. So I need to be able to do it myself. And we've seen this over and over. It's also a question of how you are mentored. And again, I can't get into all of that, which is really exciting, but it's just too much. There are certain traditions. It is very unpopular in one lab to take a broad essay. You do it yourself. You know, there are certain levels, of course, but you have to learn how to mix your own stuff. Okay, you can't buy everything nowadays. You wouldn't even have to produce anything. There are some people who say the lab is going to die eventually, the physical lab. They say that in the sociology of science, they call this the transition from the wet lab to the dry lab. It's all going to be biostatisticians and informaticians just simulating things. You don't even have to do anything else. Well, we're arguing that this is not happening, at least not right now. Then there's something else that you can see in the databases that to me is mind-blowing, and I want to have a contagion effect here on you in terms of how crazy this is. So you're thinking the databases have broken down the scientific process and made it so into components, made it so visible that there is really nothing that can go wrong. And then there's this postdoc talking about the PI and says, you know, some folks just don't cite his work, even though they do the same things. They don't acknowledge him at all. He says it's weird. Okay, so there is something that would make absolute sense. There are two labs. You have that more in the natural sciences than you have it in the social sciences, but my prediction is that we're going down the same route. You're working on two similar problems, and you get to similar conclusions. And then there is a race to the top meaning the top journal and the publication that comes out. Okay, so if you are a competitor, you don't want to be citing or acknowledging what the other person is doing, because it is easier to pretend they don't exist at all. But it's a game. Okay, it's not that you're just taking the best information that's out there and you're using it for your own work. Okay, and then again about competition, you need to understand in the biological sciences there is this huge risk of being scooped. Somebody finds out what you're doing, they can replicate it themselves and publish it first. So there's another one. This is Chloe who talks about getting a reagent. You know, so not doing it herself. She wants to get it. And she said, now, if they are a friend of Marcos, the PI, that's not a problem for us. Okay, so if I want to get something and it's a friend of the PI, that's not a problem. A call and they will send it around. If they're a direct competitor, then we might try to find the reagent from somebody else. This has a lot to do with searching for the right knowledge to do your job. Do you go to the best possible place, or do you go to the best possible place given all your social constraints? Same in this, what appears to be an exact science, but is not so much. So usually when you ask for the mouse, they will briefly ask you back, what do you need it for? So if you go to a competitor and tell them what you need it for, they say, that makes a lot of sense. Let me just do this myself. And I already have the mouse. So, and depending on who you're dealing with, they may or may not try to steal your idea. Okay. I'm taking a fast step forward now. And I'm going to show you an a network that you're not going to find very sophisticated, but it's going to help me make some points. Okay, so this is these are the 3 ego nets of the 3 PIs that we observed, and these are co-authorships. Okay, so they have a total of 137 papers between them, which in biology means that they're not very senior. And if Nash was on there, he would probably have all that and more by himself. But anyway, so these are 137 publications, and I'm putting this up there to tell you the things that you can't see if you just collect this kind of data. All right, so we have so far just visualized the strength of ties. So how many times have they actually published together, and then color-coded for the institutional affiliations. Okay, so the 3 PIs, not very surprisingly, well, let me just do this, are here, here, and here. Okay. These 2 were postdocs together. Okay. But if you look closely, I can't zoom in because that's what it is, you will see that they actually do not have a lot of publications between the 2 of them. Okay. And that is because they talked for decades after their postdoc, for a decade after their postdoc, but only recently started reaping the benefits of this year-long, decade-long conversation, and are now publishing together. So if you're just looking at this without knowing that, you're just saying they're not connected. They're not sharing knowledge. But of course they are, and very influentially so. They share students and so on. Okay, this is one example of what you can see. Then this guy works a lot with a lot of Germans. And, you're just saying, well, fair enough. Well, the field here was founded by a German. Another fascinating thing of this field is that everybody is alive and well. The founders of the field are alive and well, and everybody is publishing. So you don't have anybody dying off from the network. So hopefully, I haven't really checked if everybody's alive, but they're there. So I'm going to tell you a little bit, if I have a few minutes, of the data collection effort that we're doing right now. And then you have this guy. You would think that this is, I don't know, a good friend, or at least a frequent collaborator. This person has not written a single line in any paper. This is somebody who is the head of a medical center who sits on the cells that they need to do their work. Okay, so if you do a co-authorship analysis, this will be a very prominent node, and you'll be all excited about finding the seeds of knowledge. And instead, well, he has the material, but he is not contributing the scientific knowledge. Okay, just some things to think about. And funnily enough, you can also see that this is the youngest guy. He has a smaller network, and he also is at a medical school, so he works with, he's slightly more interdisciplinary than the other 2. These are just a few of these things. And again, about this guy here, they don't consider it a collaboration. So when you talk to a biologist and you say, what's he doing here? It's like, that's not a collaboration. We put him on the paper because he gets us our cells, but that's not a collaboration. It's not considered as such. Okay. So before I go to the conclusions, I just want to give you a little glimpse of what we're up to next. We are currently collecting. This was just a pilot project to just see if what we're doing works. We're collecting the bibliographic information of all 300 scientists, of the 300 PIs in this field. And our students hate us for it, are also mining the acknowledgements, because we are saying that that is an important connection that is not captured in the co-authorship. And they hate us even more for offline conference programs that we have collected from the 90s to now. It's a conference that happens every 2 years, and we want to try to see who are the invited speakers, and how does what people present at the conferences map onto their publication data. You might know that nowadays nobody goes to a biology conference presenting data that isn't secured in some sort of publication yet. It used to be that you would go and just present the hot new thing, but now you present the hot new thing that has just been accepted, or at least is somewhere under review, because it's just so fast. So, and together with this data, and hopefully together with Yuval, we will try to explain what is going on in these networks. So, just to go back to wrap up a little bit on the topics that I've touched on, the databases. If you take databases as an exemplification of virtual organizations, you do see that they affect knowledge production. Okay, there is an access to data that is unprecedented and an access to collaborators. On the other hand, there is this darn social thing that is still keeping us from making science work perfectly. Interpersonal factors such as trust, affect, communication, to just mention a few. And then there is still a huge hierarchy. And so we find it's really important to combine the micro and macro views to understand this complex process. And I'd like to thank the people who have worked on this project. And thank you for your attention.
Something that is on the minds of several of the folks in this room, at least from, I know for a fact, because many of us have been struggling with some of the same kinds of issues. So do you have some type of questions?
No, I was just trying to repeat that you're saying that many people are working on similar things, so you should, you see, I'm doing as I'm told. So please ask any questions that you have, and obviously I invite you to disagree with me. Yeah.
I'm interested in how you mentioned two ways of thinking about non-existing ties and trying to. So there are the ties that don't exist because of rivalry, and the ties that don't exist because there's a. I mean, so among rivals there is kind of a conversation going on. They're aware of each other's work. They're just not cited. Those people wouldn't show up in the acknowledgments either.
Oh no.
But then there are also the non-existing ties between the two people who are postdocs together, and they're having a conversation that's just taking a decade to bear fruit. So, I mean, I guess those data aren't in the bibliographic network, and I'm curious how you're going about trying to incorporate that in the network analysis.
Well, that's a very good question. The question is, how do you incorporate I wouldn't say they're non-existing ties, not non-visual ties, into the network analysis. And I would be inclined to say that we can't incorporate it into the analysis, but we can. We can. Ladies and gentlemen, we can. So then I should have you answer the question. For me, it is important to be aware of that, to just know that these things are going on, so that you don't look at the network picture and jump to false conclusions. And I very much acknowledge that this is a matter of scale. So with 300 folks, you can do things that you can't do with 3 million folks. So I don't know, the size of networks that go on in this lab are mind-blowing to me. So maybe
only through experimental design, basically. So I think there's this concept of activated networks. If you ask someone to recorder network.
Oh.
Where you priming that network
Okay.
and map that onto this, then you might actually get all those different, missing, non-existing, or non-visual type of types.
Right.
But that would require some more effort from your
Right. So.
from everyone involved.
So that's what Yuval is saying, that you can do a survey and ask them actually about their ties, and then and prime them. So tell them, what about this guy and that guy, because you know that could be an issue. We're currently not thinking about doing that, but we might. But from the bibliometric analysis, I don't think you can get to that. Yeah.
There are another approach that some statisticians have taken is link prediction models or link detection models, where especially people who are working with terrorist networks or other covert networks, you don't expect that you're going to get all the ties because there's a concerted effort to conceal them in those kinds of situations. So there's quite a lot of modeling efforts being done on trying to infer ties that exist in reality, but you're not seeing them. It's a slightly different situation, but the same thing, I imagine, could also be applied here to say, the tie doesn't show up here, but there are many reasons for us to believe that there must be something happening here, even though in this case they're concealing it, not for covert reasons, but for competitive reasons. And so there are some models that have been used that we've been looking at in terms of link prediction models that can be used. The other application of that is that it could be the case, Nick, that you talk to two scenarios is these two people are competing, that's why they don't like each other, or you can say these two people don't have a link because it's just a design for the collaboration. The third is that they really don't know each other's work even though they should. Right? You just really don't know what it's for. And so that last part is where you can think of recommended, which says you really ought to be talking to all these really good support. So in all of those cases, you have a situation where you have a link that appears to be missing, but either is there and you just don't know it, or should be there. And so there is a body of literature that I think you and others can speak to, where are looking at link prediction models that allow you to get it.
That is fascinating. That is a little bit outside of my realm, but that's what collaborations are for, right? Did anybody have any? Yes.
Thanks. This talk, you mentioned you had some field notes about the competitors, and you even had a subject that was a competitor. He didn't understand. Really thought it was weird. He didn't understand why he was a competitor. And how do you get to be a competitor versus someone that's trusted? How did you get in that spot?
So there are two parts of your question. One is to not even know that he's a competitor is weird, and or
when you said it's weird, I don't know why
yeah.
That's not being cited.
Yeah.
So apparently he was perceived as a competitor, and he didn't know why he was.
Yeah. So the person relating the story is the postdoc of the PI. So he's just learning the ropes of the profession and just saying, this is weird. It would make a lot of sense to me that these two actually build on each other's knowledge to work on this understanding of the greater system, but they don't for some petty reasons that he finds weird. So it's not, he knows it, but he still is fighting. Maybe in a few years he will just say, that's what it is, and not cite his own competitors. that might be the case. And the other part of the question is, how do you become a competitor? That is a very profound question. I'm not sure you want to get me started on that one, because we have a lot of evidence of people talking about the move from competitor to collaborator and the move from collaborator to competitor. So there is this extreme competition to publish something first, and so when you have an interest, an idea, you can do a variety of things. And some, as some people will attest to, of these reactions have to do with your personality, right? Are you a nice guy, or are you, do you walk over dead bodies? But so one guy one PI was saying, when I find somebody who does something interesting, I reach out to them and I try to suggest that we could work together. And he has actually burned his fingers more than once, where somebody said, "Yeah, sure. Why don't you send me what you have?" And then that person would take off. That's the youngest one. So he doesn't do that anymore. He's just saying, I've just learned it the hard way that not everybody is nice. But then if you have, on the other hand, trying to give a nuanced answer here, but there are so many facets at play. So you've been a postdoc together. This obviously does not apply to this lab. This is strictly, but you have to. What does a postdoc mean? That means it's the last step towards being an independent investigator. You are being trained to be an independent scientist. So you have to build your own body of knowledge. You have to have your own data so that you can start your own program of research. So you've been a buddy with somebody, worked side to side and bench to bench for 5 years, and then suddenly you have to differentiate yourself. So you become a competitor. You were on papers together before because the most common structure of co-authorship is that everybody who works in the lab is on the paper for a given and has something to do with that kind of research. So you were a collaborator, and then you become a competitor because you have to differentiate yourself. And the other instance that I can relate to you is one of the PIs that we observed. He said, "I modeled my career after another biologist who was in line for the Nobel Prize." So he can't really explain why he did that, but he was just fascinated with her thinking. But when you copy somebody's thinking, they will not like it. So he is a competitor. He wanted to emulate her, and he ended up being a competitor. So there are many ways in which you can go from one direction to the other, and from being a collaborator to a competitor, and from a competitor to a collaborator. You could also at some point say, "I'm not getting this published. I just can't get it done." So you have to get off your high horse and say, "Let's try to do this together." And then if somebody else is in a similar situation, that will make it a collaboration. Does that answer your question more than you had asked for?
Do you come across many situations of this notion of co-opetition, that is, sets of collaborators who are also simultaneously collaborating on one thing and competing on another?
Did I come across a lot of instances of co-opetition? Yes, absolutely. That's why I'm happy that Hugh pointed at that, because that has happened. I mean, that seems to be a recurring theme. There are these dynamics in the field that it's like a dance. You are together here, and then you separate. You go off with another partner, and then you will never speak to that person again. And it is very much so. And it depends on what you want to do, and obviously it depends on who you know. It seems to be, though, that the burned bridge is never going to be rebuilt. So if you have, if somebody has scooped you, they're on the naughty list. Anything else? Yes, that's it.
I'm interested in bridging methodologies, and so from your perspective as an ethnographer, essentially collaborative and scientific culture and knowledge development from a very qualitative perspective, what you think network scholars could be doing more of or a better job of, what kinds of questions we should be asking so that we're doing a better job of maybe capturing that culture that you study qualitatively.
So what can network researchers do to get better at the questions that we are uncovering?
Yeah, to capture that culture.
Right, capture the culture. Well, so you're doing it. You are trying to understand, and I think I'm not belittling anybody here. It's just different ways. I think the future is really to work together. We are experiencing something similar in the natural sciences. We know something very well and not very much about something else. So to shed light on a problem from different perspectives is the best thing. But to understand what is going on is just so important. That's why sometimes, I don't even know if I can say this out loud, but I sometimes have a little bit of an issue with a physicist studying social behavior, because I'm just saying, yeah, I wish there was a little bit more of an understanding from the researcher's point of view of what's going on. And just to also be humble enough to listen to somebody else who might have an insight. I'm pretty sure that from what you've heard now, you will think about these things the next time you look at your network, right? So I think I've already made my point. And I obviously have to learn that large data are very useful for getting a big picture. So I don't think I think if you're trained here, you know how to think critically, you know how to look at social issues, and that's important, to just understand the setting that you're in, and not maybe just focus on controlling your bias or getting low R squares or something, you know, or high R squares or whatever. I'm not going to say that anymore because you're going to club me. Yes.
A comment and then a question. I think that was right. A comment. It seemed, at least in the beginning of your the talk, you were talking a lot about the database, and then it seemed like the database basically becomes. And so initially, I was led to believe that maybe you're talking a bit about, how it aggregates things, and maybe it already kind of implicitly filters the knowledge people are aware of. But most of, I think what we all responded to had to do with the social relations. So the database is really much more of a kind of black box that we don't really understand unless we think about the social relations that are implicit in the publications and the peer-reviewed publications that are accessible via that warehouse of the database. So the question has to do with research questions, going back to saying, how does collaboration change the knowledge being produced? I'm wondering if you could speak directly to that research question in terms of what you've learned from the ethnography about how knowledge is changed by collaboration.
Right. So your question is, how does what I talk about in the databases have to do with how knowledge is being produced? That's very simplified, but so I didn't probably do a good enough job in explaining how databases are not an abstract thing. They are a repository of knowledge, but the network that you saw is based on a database. That's from PubMed. Okay, so the co-authorship it's just one exemplification of a virtual organization. So you ask yourself, how do you study virtual organizations? One way is to look at these physical repositories where people store knowledge and how they interact with each other. How is collaboration, or how is the scientific knowledge production changing in this virtual realm? That was the original question. I was hoping to get to this, that the fact that that you have this conundrum between having more access, but also having more exposure to data that you might not be able to trust. So you are actually not necessarily, you are not necessarily improving science just because you have access to data. There are other social factors that will hinder your perfect creation of scientific knowledge. So again, to just make it very clear, at least to make my point very clear, you can disagree with me, how do virtual organizations affect scientific knowledge production? They, in at least a dual way. They make it easier and they make it harder. And some things have nothing to do with the virtuality, but have something to do with our social networks and our perceptions of people and the trust we have in what they put online. So, does that make sense?
So I guess, so with if you could design an experiment, kind of, find out what a virtual organization did, what would that experiment look like? And is there anything that resembles that experiment in the data?
Well, I don't know what an experiment would look like, but it sounds like you have an idea. So, what?
The idea of the closed network, some of them are more or less, they have access to different databases, so they have, you have to have some heterogeneity in order to be able to compare outcomes.
Right, right.
And if there's some rivalry, producing some. I haven't,
right.
I'm not familiar with the setting well enough, but when you talk about it being a closed network, maybe there's this link detection, algorithm to kind of like, match on,
Well, that would be a simulation, not really an but there's yet another dimension that you're adding to this that would be fascinating to look into, but I really don't know. And then the measure of productivity is what again? It's publications. So I was thinking, for example, I don't know about the experiment part, but to just really get at this, you're right, I was grappling with this. So somebody is looking at a lot of databases, and what are they looking at? So there are these signals that I'm getting that Stanford has the money and the grant. Maybe somebody died of prostate cancer and is giving a lot of money for people to collect that kind of data. So that is giving a real big competitive advantage to Stanford, and resources are flocking towards building up the genome or the information in this sort of field, okay? And then another instance that we have, somebody from Princeton comes to give a talk at one of our research sites and alerts them to a database that she's curating. And then they will go there and use that in their research. So I don't know how I can get to this. We have a lot of productivity measures of individual researchers. We have the measures of university productivity. We can, but to know, I mean, without a survey, I don't know, to know what kind of databases they're using in their work, I don't know. And does what kind of and how many times? I don't know how to do that. But it's a good thing to think about, definitely. Yeah.
I was just going to say, kind of getting back to this idea of the influences that people have. Like, are you looking at, from a network perspective, but observing interactions between people using the database and where they're going? So, like, if you can just trace data, like, capture kind of what they're looking at and who they're reading, and I mean, I'm just like, I don't know if that.
So you're asking me, are you actually doing a virtual ethnography? That's a new field that's coming up to just trace people. I'm not doing it in this. I should actually apply for more money and do the experiment in the virtual ethnography. That is no, and it's actually something that I am thinking of working on with a computer scientist on a climate database, actually, to study provenance and to study where they click and what they actually do. We're not envisioning it for this program. This is already quite an ambitious endeavor, but this is very helpful in terms of, and actually one of the people who I cited, Christine Hein, she has done a little bit of this, just following one database and seeing how that is being constructed and what is going in and who is using that.
And I can see, where they go in these spaces, and then back in and actually talking to them about how they're constructing, seeing if there's influences of where they went, where they've been going. So actually having people that specific people that you track, and then
Right.
It would be interesting.
Of course, it would be very interesting to track that. And I'm hoping that maybe some of you will go down that route and think about something like that. I think virtual ethnography is to get to this mushy concept of what a virtual organization actually is, are a future, and we see them being funded more and coming up. There just are not many of those. If you think of it, this is, especially in biology, I mean, it's a few 15 years old, so but it's a gold mine, and there are other sciences that have a lot more traceable movements, that physics, for example. So, yeah.
Well, we already passed our hour, so you managed to make us all another exciting hour thinking about issues and prodding our mind about it. So again, let's join that.
Thank you.